hello, and welcome to another episode of the Dunker Spot. We are part of the Basketball News Podcast Network. I am your host, Nekias Duncan, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Steve Jones Jr. How are you, sir?
Good day. I'm doing well. Happy to be here with you. Shout out to all the dunkers out there. Continue to embrace your bounce. Tell a friend. Happy to be with you big time. Hashtag big juice. Hashtag big filtered. For those who are not knowledgeable of that, we had the Dunker Space on Friday, and it was revealed that Martinelli's has a whole different kind of juice that Nekias knows nothing about. It's unfiltered. It's apparently the good stuff, and Nekias is strictly filtered because he's slightly basic. So,
wow.
But I'm happy to be here with you. Mr. AVO himself, Atlanta's very own, in the building, in the flesh. I know we're going to get a lot out of you during that segment. He's really locked into that game. There's a whole lot of Martinelli's talk during the Bucks-Nets game, but he's really locked into the Hawks game. So it's very interesting. I'm very interested to see what we're going to do. And I'm going to keep that same energy. I'm here today.
Okay. Glad you're here. Glad to have you with us.
Oh, I do have one question for you, though.
All right.
Hashtag Big Ellie. Martinelli.
I don't know if we can rock with that one. I'm going to be honest with you.
LL Cool J did.
Yeah, I'm not LL Cool J.
You sure?
Yeah.
You gotta give yourself some more credit, buddy.
I would like for my bank account to have more credit before I lean into that one. But anyway, we did have an exciting slate of games over the weekend. A lot of banter on the timeline. I'm sure we will dig into all of that, particularly when we get to the Bucks-Nets game one. But before we get into that, we had some coaching changes. Terry Stotts is out in Portland. Steve Clifford is out in Orlando. It's odd. And there's just some weirdness going on around the Portland opening in general. Like beyond Stotts being fired, there was an initial list of names that would be that was linked to the Portland job. And then we get an article that Jason Kidd is the preference of one Damian Lillard. And we have another article that says Jason Kidd and Chauncey Billups are kind of the top two for Damian Lillard. And then Jason Kidd is like, you know what? Nah, I think I'm all right. Just going to chill here. And now I don't really know where Portland's going with it.
No, all of it was weird. I mean, I think when there was rumblings and talks of Terry Stotts being on the outs months before the season ended, and then Portland made that run, then they lost, and then Friday gets dumped during Clippers-Mavericks, which I felt was odd that they tried to slide that in there then. I want to give a salute to Coach Stotts for the work he did in Portland, for that run he had to make the playoffs. I believe 8 out of 9 years is impressive. I mean, the conference finals run is great. Obviously, they had the years where they lost in the first round, some disappointments in the playoffs, but to keep that kind of consistency through injuries, through adversity, through roster changes, through style changes, I don't think he got enough credit for what he did there. So I'm going to give a salute to him. I think he ended up being the second winningest Blazer coach in history, which is quite the honor. It's tough for a Blazer coach to go out of Portland on a high note. I'm trying to find the name of the one who Blazer fans didn't want to get rid of by the end of it, but that's a whole different story for a different day. The weirdness of it continued because I'm gonna get my timeline all messed up, but it felt like the Jason Kidd name was put out immediately, which was also funny because the section of people who were all about firing Stotts were then presented with Jason Kidd as the next option, and somehow became more infuriated, which was entertaining to see. But then the J Kidd thing comes out, his name comes out. Then I think the Dame article came out where he's like, hey, I want J Kidd. Did he say he wanted Chauncey as well? It was one of those two. He wanted a point guard. I think he said both. But it was like, hey, I want one of those two, which is cool, star player. You know, the timing was weird because I think we had a tweet from Chris Haynes where it was like, hey, Damian Lillard's going to have some heavy input, sources say. And then the article came out where it was like, yo, I want J Kidd or Chauncey. I was like, huh, interesting. And then we get Jason Kidd withdrawing before the search even began. Like, it's Sunday. Like, it's been what, 2 days. And he's like, nah, I'm good, which is also weird because Jason Kidd became an assistant coach to, with the hopes of becoming a head coach again. I think that's fair to say. I think we all know what the game is. That, all due respect, put in the work, grind, get your spot back, do whatever you got to do. And it's odd for like an opening to come up and you just be like, nah, I'm good. But
Not
I
just,
kind of go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, not just an opening coming up, an opening that the literal star player, the most important person in the organization is like, hey, I want you. We can quibble about, because again, there were two different articles. Like Haynes had one with Dame saying he wanted J Kidd. There was one from The Athletic that mentioned J Kidd and Chauncey Billups. So at the very least, like, you are in the top two for the franchise player. And for you, and it's not like the team is bad. And apparently you and Dame already have a relationship. So this should have been, you would think it would be a slam dunk on the surface, and it wasn't.
Yeah, but the timing of all that took that slam dunk into a floater of some sorts. Because I mean, if that happens within hours, what kind of real process is going to be had? You open up all sorts of questions there. I think Woj put that in there as far as Kidd feeling some type of way about how it would look, which I understand there. But just weird stuff, dog. Like, very weird stuff. I'm going to go left real quick. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
If you're Jason Kidd's agent, how upset are you right now?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say, because I'm sure if he scrolled, saw that, I'm sure there was something thrown at some point in time. I'm sure there was a little bit of anger as far as the timing of all this. Looks like, hey, things are going great. I think we're going good. Wait a minute. Everything's moving too fast. So, yeah. Hopefully the bag wasn't fumbled. But we'll see where Portland goes. They've got options. It'll be very interesting to see where they go, because those are big shoes to fill. Like, as much success as Portland had, that's not an automatic plug and play type deal. Like, if you don't know how to get the most out of those guys, you don't know how to use those combinations correctly, you can find yourself in a sticky situation. We don't know how much of it was Dame playing well, CJ playing well, how much of it was Stotts getting the most out of them. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I just thought it was weird deal. And also, everyone was killing Jason Kidd on the timeline. I felt like,
yeah, like he has some stuff that would upset a fan base, I will say. So I get it. The timing around all of that was very weird. The timeline itself was just funny to me. Just watching, like, there's like a roller coaster of like Blazer fans being happy that Stotts was out, and then once the name started popping, I was like, wait, what do you mean? Wait, no, hold on, wait, bring him back. My question, because I understand why Stotts is gone. It's also like fair to say that Stotts is a good coach. I guess my question becomes, at what point does the GM get some flack in Portland?
oh, man, so you've elevated from Damon CJ slander to Neil Olshey slander.
I don't know if it's slander, but it's just like, it does get to a certain point to where there's only so much you can do with a roster. Because, like, what, going way back to earlier pods or whatnot, like, one of the reasons to be, like, coming into the season, at least, one of the reasons to be excited about Portland was that they added these defensive pieces. There were talks about them being more aggressive scheme-wise on defense. They were finally going to be able to change some things up. And they weren't able to do that because they weren't able to execute because it just didn't really flow that way. And they didn't really have many counters to that. So like I just feel like at a certain point, there's only so much that Terry Stotts can do. I mean, there are always like rotation tweaks to make and stuff like that. So he isn't faultless. But it's interesting to me that Stott seems like the only person that's going to take the fall in Portland.
What I'll say about that is if Neil O'Shea survived that summer where he gave the bag to Alan Crabb, Evan Turner, Myers Leonard, Festus Ezeli, and Mo Harkless after missing out on Chandler Parsons, I think he's okay.
Fair enough.
Because everyone's rehashing the run and going through this and overachieving and all that. Everyone forgets that summer should have been the wrap. They had the space and they used it on that and somehow survived that and was able to reshape and retweak and all that good stuff. I thought they made the moves they needed to make. They just ran into the teams that it didn't work against. Like the Lakers, they couldn't beat the Lakers. Mm-hmm. And then this year they faced a Denver team where you could say, oh, Denver's missing so-and-so sort of starters. Couldn't guard Jokic, didn't have the right personnel to make it work. Their versatility and lineups couldn't work because eventually Jokic was going to play. So it'll be interesting. But usually you, as a GM, you get one coach to go through. So if you let go of Stotts, you bring another guy in, the light usually does tend to turn towards you. So it'll be interesting to see how that works.
So with Steve Clifford in Orlando, I understand the two sides parting, especially if Orlando's about to go full rebuild. I guess I kind of feel for Steve Clifford because I think he's also a very good coach. It seems like he's only gotten the rebuilds. And I think I tweeted after the mutual parting was announced, like, it would be nice to see what he could do with the more ready-made team. Like, what would he look like in Portland? Especially since defense is such an issue for Portland. And like, he is a guy like in Charlotte, in Orlando, like he got Charlotte to defend at a pretty high level with Al Jefferson starting at center. And if you can do that, then surely you can work with like Nurk. But I don't know. Like I'm interested to see what happens with him because he also had some health stuff this year.
Well, that's the number one thing. I hope his health is fine.
Right.
Because he had health stuff before. So, and that was scary. And so hopefully he's okay. It was good to see him actually be able to come back and continue coaching and could, even go to Orlando for me. I mean, it's a guy who I think he made the playoffs. He took the Hornets to the playoffs twice. He took Orlando to the playoffs twice. The issue becomes, how does he get his third spot? What kind of spot does he take? Does he get a playoff team? Just with so many names out there, it becomes a kind of a deal where do you get lapped? You think of some of the potential head coaches that are on coaching staffs as assistant coaches. So how does he get back in the mix coming off that year? But I've always admired that the work that Coach Clifford's teams put in. He's got a brand. They've got an identity. He gets the most out of a lot of players. It would be nice to see him possibly have more talent instead of having to consistently kind of wring the towel a little bit, to your point. I just think this one is just one of those deals where Orlando's clearly taking a left. And if I'm Steve Clifford, I don't have to take a left with you. I got 1 year left. I'm gonna just go ahead and keep driving straight. See you guys when I see you. So that one felt pretty up and down. Where they go was going to be very interesting as far as who gets that job and who wants that job, because that's clearly going to be a rebuild. So who's going to take that and try to embrace it and try and get that team in the right direction and That'll be interesting to see the list. We didn't get a list of names with the Magic search.
This is true. We did not get a list of names for the Magic search. I wonder. Like I would imagine, just in a vacuum, I would imagine that's the spot where you get your first year coach and you kind of grow with the group. But even with that, with it being a rebuild, first and foremost, and not only is it a rebuild, it's a rebuild in which like your best young asset, really your two best young assets, Jonathan Isaac and Markelle Fultz, each have health issues. So that's a tricky first job to get, to where you're basically going to be judged on how well you develop those guys, and you don't know how available they're going to be to start. Like I think Isaac's slated to miss at least a portion of next season as well with his injuries. And then it's also trying to make those guys fit, because even when you do get healthy, like there's Fultz, there's Isaac, there's Wendell Carter Jr. Those are three guys that are going to be very good on defense, but like that's already a weird spacing fit before you even figure out like where Orlando's going to land in the lottery. Who do you draft? How does that fit with the young core? Where do you go from there? So I'm curious to see what the actual list is going to be and who's going to be up for that kind of job.
I mean, there's only so many of them, so there's going to be intrigue. People are going to want it, but at the same time, that's a job where you may clean the house and not get to live in it, so to speak. As far as you may do a lot of the lifting, get the most set of guys, develop them. You may not get the chance to win, or you may only get one chance to win. Or, hey, this is where it's time. We're supposed to be here. You look at what Brett Brown did in Philadelphia. For me, I was surprised he got the second piece of it, because I thought they were going to move on once it felt like it was winning time. I'm glad he got the second chance. But sometimes you get that job, it doesn't go well, some of it gets pushed to you, and now all of a sudden you have that you got to carry on, because the league it's about perception. You put Orlando Magic on your resume, that's great, but you put Orlando Magic 60 wins, 100 and whatever losses, it looks a different way. It looks a different way. So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun stuff, I hope.
I also hope. All right, well, with that, we can move to some basketball.
So much basketball. What a great basketball weekend. Great basketball weekend. And we're actually recording not during a game for the first time in 17 pods.
Yeah, this feels very different. Like, I'm on the East Coast, so for basketball to be over with, let me take that back. For NBA basketball to be over with at like 6 o'clock, it's just like, I have time to catch up on some WNBA. I have time to just wrap up on notes. I have time to review some film for these series. Like, it's nice to have a breather instead of watching a game and then going directly into a pod and trying to.
I'm great. Hey, first round being done, fantastic. I feel re-energized. I'm locked in.
Steve is here,
and I can't wait to get back and get you back for your Sue Bird slander. Like, don't think the WNBA talk is gone. I've been watching. Liberty still, but your Sue Bird slander, you must pay for that. Just want you to know that.
There was no slander. I'm not going to let that narrative live.
Let the truth set you free, my friend.
What do you mean? I'm telling the truth. There was no slander. I was giving her props. Like, she's still very productive this late into her career. Like, that was the point. We're not going to turn this into a negative. We can keep this age bit going. Absolutely not. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Sue Bird. Can't believe you're trying to trap me this early in the pod. This is great. Anyway, we got game 1 of Bucks Nets on Saturday.
We're starting with Bucks Nets.
We are starting with Bucks Nets.
Oh, folks, buckle up. If you are sitting at home, get yourself a cup of coffee or whatever your beverage is. Maybe some lemonade, some tea, maybe some apple juice.
I see.
Let's have a good time. Get your popcorn ready. I got 2 words for you before you start, Nekias.
Okay.
Blake Griffin.
Blake Griffin was very good in game one. I will give you that. But before we even dig into that and let you take several victory laps, I feel like that's going to be the energy for this one. We got 43 seconds into the game before the battle of the big threes ended, at least temporarily. James Harden drives, tries to attack Drew Holiday on the drive, goes up for a layup, comes up grabbing the right hamstring. He goes straight to the locker room, does not return, was ruled out for the rest of the game, has already been ruled out for game two. Not sure what the severity is. They have not given a specific timeline to this point, just that he's out for game two. First and foremost, this stinks. Like, as highly anticipated as this series is, to lose James Harden that early, not just to lose James Harden, but to lose him literally 43 seconds of game time. It just kind of took the wind out of the sails a little bit in terms of the excitement level. It's still going to be a great series. There's still plenty of great players in it, but I was looking forward to those three in Brooklyn battling out with those three in Milwaukee and seeing how Milwaukee's going to try to defend them, like where James Harden's going to be, like how like James Harden got a position on Giannis. Like, it was just, I don't know, it would have been nice to have a healthy bout between those two, and that is obviously in jeopardy right now.
Nah, I didn't even really want about it yesterday because I came in, I started to watch it, did something, came back, and James Harden wasn't there. I saw he was injured. Didn't want to update, didn't want to look at it, didn't want to talk about it because I feel bad for James Harden, like the human being. Like, if you think about it, the whole thing in Houston went down how it went down. We don't have to rehash it. We know what happened. He gets to Brooklyn, and it's clear in the interviews he did, you could see his mindset, where he was trying to go, what he was trying to get to, what he was trying to accomplish, and feeling like he could finally do it. And he performs at a very high level on the floor. And then he gets hurt. And then after he gets hurt, he comes back. Finally in the playoffs. This is the moment he's worked for. This is the place where he can continue to be the most complete version of himself as a player and get to the goals he's looking for. In the matchup that you want, as far as facing Milwaukee, gets hurt in the first minute. It stinks. It stinks. Like, so hopefully he has a speedy recovery. Hopefully mentally he's all right. But that's the part where it stinks the most. Obviously you want a good series. Obviously you want a good matchup. But just like thinking about the mental mindset, like behind that has to be a blow, just for him with the year he's had and really wanting this. Like, you could tell he wants to win. He wants to do it the right way with his guys. So that part stunk the most to me.
Yeah, it just wasn't fun at all. Like Kevin Durant talked about it. Like, even beyond the basketball, he just felt bad for James, period. Just knowing how much he wants to win, how hard he works. And then just, I mean, to re-aggravate that, the same hamstring has to be an added pile of like mental anguish. It's like, it's this again. I already missed like 20 games or whatever it was. And he went off against what was left of Boston in the first round. So he was pumped, prime, ready to go. And this is the matchup that we've been waiting for. And didn't make it a minute. But again, he's out for game two. We don't have an updated timeline. Like, it'd be nice if he gets to come back for game three or game four, depending on how the rest of the series goes. But it's a blow. So from there, another Harden question, and then we'll transition to the actual game. Like, what immediate adjustments do you see from either side, really, with no James Harden in game two?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see what Milwaukee does, because you made the PJ Tucker move early. You made the PJ Tucker move in anticipation of facing the big three, and you're not going to face the big three. So do you stick with that? Because it's one of those things where it's a little hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. So that'll interest me. And then as far as Brooklyn goes, who they decide to actually start will be interesting to me. I think it'll be one of those things where they're just going to have to continue to rely on the movement. We've seen what KD and Kyrie look like against the Bucks, just those two, but it's going to have to be a group effort as far as continuing to move the ball. And is it still going to be Mike James getting it done? Is it still going to be that kind of work? How much of an impact can Bruce Brown have if he's going to end up being the guy that's in that lineup? And how does that alter the matchups, the thinking for Milwaukee on the defensive end? Because now essentially you might have two rollers if Bruce Brown is in there, where you can actually use him as a screener. You can space Blake, get Brooke out of the paint, those kind of things. So that part will be interesting, but there's a lot of adjustments that go from game 1 to game 2 beyond just having James Harden. I think Milwaukee prepared for that team, and then they were quickly reminded that there's a little bit more to Brooklyn than just the talent, which I'm sure we'll get to.
That we will.
So you know what? Before we go, did you feel like the PJ Tucker move was too early?
I don't think it was too early. It was surprising more than anything.
I thought it'd be a tweet before game 3. And so when I saw the tweet before game 1, I was like, whoops, I was wrong.
Yeah, like I didn't see, like I knew that was going to be a lineup that Milwaukee was going to play. Like even if they didn't like start PJ until game 3 or whatever, like I knew that at some point during the game, they were going to run PJ, Giannis, Brooke. And we'll dig into some of the other lineups we saw in game 1 in a little bit. But I knew we were going to see it. I didn't expect them to start game 1 with it. So that was interesting. I thought, I mean, we spent so much time on the pod and in the space on Friday talking about what do you do with Pat Connaughton? And I even wrote about like, what do you do with Pat Connaughton? And Bud was like, you know what? We're just not even going to answer that question. We're just going to take him out of start lineup. We're going to start PJ Tucker. He's going to get the KD reps. We're not even going to do this. So like, it was a pleasant surprise because I got the reasoning behind it. And like what I wrote in the primer for basketballnews.com, I was like, I can see that defensively. I worry about what that does to the offense because I don't know if PJ's really going to be guarded like that. But it was a tweak that I understood. I would say, to your point, it probably makes sense for them to go away from that in game 2, at least as a starting lineup. Because I think you wanted to have PJ out there so you would have a more firm answer against the big 3. And if it's the big 2, then you just put Drew on Kyrie. That is it. The only question from there becomes, do you want to go Middleton or Giannis on KD? Because now you don't have to worry about the third guy that just kind of blitzes everyone.
That's Mike James slander.
Is it Mike James slander?
In his opinion.
I don't know if that counts. Mike James might think he's the best player on the team. Like, that's a whole nother.
What you mean might?
See, there's my point. So no slander there. But we can dig a little bit deeper into the game. Do you want to go first? I feel like you have a lot on what we saw.
I mean, I can go first. That's fine. I feel like I might have a little bit of a different take from yours, but as far as the Milwaukee perspective goes, it felt a lot like the game 1 they had in the Miami series. As far as they left some food on the table, they had some questionable things they were doing, shooting variants, as the folks like to say.
Know how much you love that.
Quick pause. This is the second time. I never noticed when Milwaukee has the game where they're not making threes because there's like 17 other things that they're not doing correctly or good enough, and they still have a chance to win. So I'm never looking and being like, oh, Milwaukee's just missing threes. If they fix that, they'll win. But there's like 17 other things they could have fixed, and they still could have won that game. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Because I thought Milwaukee actually did a really good job in the first quarter. Offensively, defensively, they were there. They had a plan. Brooke wasn't getting played off the court. They were attacking in transition. They were getting their guys involved. And then it kind of fell apart. I know you're probably going to touch on that. Some of the things that just weird defensive miscues. Like I just don't know what the plan was sometimes. Like there was a possession where Kyrie and KD run pick and roll. It's Drew, it's Giannis. Seems like a switch. That's why you got those guys. 2 on the ball. KD's open. What are we doing? PJ Tucker, ISO against Kevin Durant. He's guarding him. He's in the lineup for that purpose, to guard Kevin Durant. Drew Holiday showing help from the baseline off Kyrie Irving. It's a cut. It's a layup. What are you doing? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Bryn Forbes in a drop. This is no disrespect to Bryn Forbes. He's maybe, 6 foot at best? Why is Bryn Forbes in a drop? He's in a drop, and he just leaves. There's about 3 or 4 possessions where he's just standing back, and then he just leaves as the guy's turning the corner, and it's just wide open for the Nets. And they got to find something for him. The overall story for me was Brooklyn's dribble penetration was huge. I think we kind of slept on what that can do. I think we kind of forgot the context of this next Nets team. They built something for a purpose. Like, yeah, they have the talent, but they also have the movement. And then once they get you in rotation, that changes the story. So the Miami series was a lot more scripted. There's a lot more situations where Milwaukee could dictate as far as the sets go, as far as, hey, we know what we can give up, we know where we can stay home, all that good stuff. With Brooklyn, they can just create rotation just by a drive. Like you may have guarded the set well, but hey, here's Kyrie, shot fake drive. Now you're helping, off to the races. Here's Kevin Durant up. He's just going to drive by PJ Tucker, off to the races. Now you're in rotation. I don't think Milwaukee was prepared for that aspect of it. So that's where I'll start, because that was the interesting part. And I'm really like, this is where I'm bothered with Milwaukee as well. They had cash money using Giannis as a screener. Just straight cash. Brooklyn did not have an answer scheme-wise because they're playing Claxton, Griffin, even KD on him. You don't want to switch. They didn't want to switch. And so basically it became a drop, and you were getting whatever you wanted out of it. Whether it was Giannis to the foul line, whether you want that or not is a different story. He was getting good rolls. It was opening things up. They just went away from it. And they were still in the game. They just went away from it. I think they ran it, 2 or 3 times I think it was the third quarter. And then all of a sudden they just decided, here, let's have Drew screen. I'm like, why? Why? But I'll let you go. Because I have some further questions. I have some more points, but I feel like you have some interesting things to say about the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee Bucks team that Nekias Duncan did choose as the Eastern Conference champions this year, ladies and gentlemen. Just want to point that out real quick.
That I did. Off top, as frustrating as the game 1 was, and I will dig into that very shortly, I do still have Milwaukee winning the series. And if James Harden is really compromised, then I feel even better about the pick, because that's a pretty big piece for Brooklyn to be missing. But yeah, the first, I won't even say the first quarter, like the first 10 minutes of the first quarter, cool. Defense was there. As you mentioned, they were pushing in transition. They were getting shots at the rim. They were running some pick and roll with Giannis as the screener. To that point, like the Chris Giannis pick and roll was creating good looks. They were doing that with an empty corner, putting further strain on Brooklyn's defense, getting good stuff out of it. And then, like, in the middle of their first quarter run, Drew Holiday is just losing his mind. Drew Holiday is, if we can go back to the NBA Live days, just like freestyle superstar stuff with the right analog stick. Just behind the back step backs, all kind of.
You remember the NBA Live freestyle control? Weren't you like 4?
This is another. This can't be a reoccurring bit. Come on now. I grew up on NBA Live, man. Don't do this. NBA Live 05 remains the greatest sports video game ever created. But anyway, Drew is just losing his mind with ISO positions in the first, and I'm just like, okay, this is odd. And then Chris Middleton is like taking, Chris Middleton pull-ups in a vacuum are good. Chris Middleton pull-ups were like 20 on the shot clock. Maybe not so good. So like the shot selection for Milwaukee, it went from we're pushing in transition, we're trying to keep you on your heels to dictate the pace, to we are frenetic and out of control, and they lost the plot very quickly in the second quarter. And the shot selection just killed me. The shot selection just killed me. Like pushing against Brooklyn is one thing. The shots that they were settling for, like they would have like a 3-on-2 break or something, and it's a pull-up three from Drew. It's a pull-up three contested from Chris, and it's just like you have them on your heels. Attack the basket. They couldn't really stop you from attacking the basket in the half court. They sure can't do it in transition. Attack. And then in the second quarter, we also get Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, and Giannis in the front court at the same time. We get Jeff Teague minutes in the second quarter. We get Jeff Teague minutes, period. But we get Jeff Teague minutes in the second quarter. As you mentioned, like Bryn Forbes was a mess on defense, which it's even more of an indictment. Like Bryn Forbes is going to be a pressure point in this series just because, like, if he's on the court with James Harden is just going to hunt him, and that's just what it's going to turn into. So for James Harden to be gone in the first 43 seconds, and Bryn Forbes is still like a big minus on defense, that's kind of a problem. And Bryn Forbes also fell into the bad shot selection thing too. Like there was a particular shot in the corner, right corner, I want to say, early in the clock. No airspace at all, just taking the shot, like no rhythm, no. I'm just like, what is Milwaukee doing? Like they played like that second quarter was like a team that felt like they had house money because Harden was done, and that they could eventually kind of settle down in the second half because they don't have to worry about the bearded man coming back in. And by that time, Brooklyn had found a flow, and then kind of blitzed them in the third quarter, and it just didn't matter from there. And then you add on the fact that Milwaukee couldn't knock down shots. I mean, they couldn't knock down threes, even the good ones at that point. This is kind of what you got. Like the game plan just didn't make sense after like the first 10 minutes of the game.
A quick side note, Bryn Forbes versus Landry Shamet is hilarious to me in this series. I believe it's the Spider-Man meme. They're just pointing at each other like the same guy. Watching them go at each other is also funny to me. It seems as if they're both playing to stay on the court. Also, Chris Middleton probably shouldn't ball watch if Landry Shamet is attacking Bryn Forbes. And that's an interesting point I wanted to bring up as well. The Joe Harris matchup, little different than the Duncan Robinson matchup. In the sense that Duncan's screens are, I don't want to say static, but you can see them coming. You know when they're coming. It's not a lot of, I mean, he cuts well, but it's not a lot of unscripted movement. Joe Harris all over the place. All over the place. Not just coming off screens, but weak side, I'm just dive. I'm at the top of the key. I'm just go to the corner. That kind of stuff, playing off those guys. And that's part of why Joe Harris has been such a key piece for Brooklyn. And I don't think that Milwaukee was ready for the cuts. They didn't let them really load up as they had in the previous series. Right. So that'll be interesting to see how they adjust to that, if Brooklyn can continue that, because we've seen in the playoffs where Brooklyn has kind of, the ball's kind of stuck, maybe the movement's not quite as there, but when they hit this level where, hey, we still got the stuff where we can beat you off the dribble, we can go one-on-one, but we're also cutting, moving the ball, it's a little tougher. And Milwaukee was just kind of, I think, stuck trying to adjust to that speed, something a little bit different. Now, here's another question for you before I dive a little bit deeper into the Chris Middleton stuff, because I got some stuff in the back pocket here for you, my friend.
Okay. Chris was bad, by the way, but go on.
Not yet. Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday shooting a combined 13 for 42 is not good. I feel like that's the series for Milwaukee. It has to be all three. And what interested me in game one is it didn't feel like Brooklyn necessarily cared if Giannis got his. But they were focused on the other two, especially Middleton. And the biggest example of that to me, if I remember correctly, I want to say Giannis brought it up in transition. He was posting up Landry Shamet, and the defense didn't move an inch. But Chris Middleton had a post up. They doubled him. And that's where I was like, ha, interesting. And now the importance of those two scoring goes up a notch if you're starting PJ Tucker, and your bench may not have guys who can contribute. If you're looking at scoring in this series, it's Bobby Portis. I mean, Pat may knock down a couple shots, but Bryn Forbes may get hot, but whatever he puts up, he may give back. So that, I think, is going to put a lot of pressure on Drew and Middleton. And that's where I kind of wanted to see more from Milwaukee. I mean, Brooklyn's out there. I think they had a lineup one time of Kyrie, Joe Harris, Mike James, all on the court at the same time. All seemed like pretty good matchups for Drew and or Middleton. Then they weren't attacking them. In a similar fashion, they didn't attack the pressure points in game one against Miami. So that I want to see what that looks like. I want to see if they can get Middleton some easier looks. I want to see if they can get Drew some easier looks to where Brooklyn really has to think and respond that way. Are you concerned at all about what Milwaukee does if those two struggle?
Oh, I mean, if those two continue to struggle, like, the series is going to be done. Like, I think there's only so much that Giannis can do. It's asking a lot for him to do his thing to a point that would neutralize KD and Kyrie. And that's excluding if James Harden comes back or what Joe Harris does, just kind of floating around the perimeter. They need those two. That's a very dull point to make, but they need those two. And to your point, like, Milwaukee does need to get Drew and Chris better looks, but I have that second quarter in my head. I have that late stretch in the first quarter in my head. They have to get themselves better looks. Like, you could scheme up some stuff in the half court. Like, there was a play early in the first quarter to the side out of bounds play. It was kind of like basically a guard screening for one of the guys after the inbounds and slice it down to the rim. Like, they normally run that for Chris. They ran it for Giannis early in the first. But, like, they can scheme up that kind of stuff at the timeouts or whatever. But, like, ultimately, they're on the court. Like, you should know what the pressure points are. You should know what a good shot is and what a good shot isn't. Like, this is as much criticism as Bud deserves in this game for a multitude of reasons. Like, I can't really give him much flack for what Drew and Chris did. Like, they took a lot of bad shots on their own. And they have to play a lot smarter than they did in game one. Because, I mean, Brooklyn did key in on those guys. Like, I don't want to take their defensive energy away from them or anything like that. But I just keep Drew in these early pull-ups were just killing me. And Chris did a lot of the same. It's just like, yo, attack.
Well, I think Milwaukee's just got to find the balance. Honestly, you can't get sucked into Brooklyn's game as far as strictly going one-on-one, strictly going transition. I thought the transition was great. Even as they were struggling, it was keeping them hanging around in the game. But you can't let that take away from your execution. You can't let that take away from you attacking them, putting pressure on them, because part of their early success was just them forcing Brooklyn to not feel comfortable. I thought they had a lot of good sequences where Brooklyn maybe wasn't necessarily ready to switch or wanted to switch certain matchups, whether it was Tucker or Lopez screening, and they were able to get some slips out of it. And they just kind of went away from all that and just kind of were spamming things. Giannis had it going as far as when they threw him in the post and they cleared out the side to get what they wanted. I just thought there was things they left on the table, and I want to see how it looks when they kind of go to those, and if Budenholzer hits those buttons. Now, quick question for you. How do you feel about Blake Griffin being able to make Brook Lopez pay more than Bam Adebayo did?
reflect well on what Bam did in that first round. I will say that. I mean, it helps when you are not only able to take threes, but are also willing to do so. So that's a part.
How'd you feel about Blake Griffin's performance?
I thought Blake had himself a good game.
I'm gonna need a little more than this. Cannot be a hashtag good for him.
What do you
After
mean?
that game, this is why I trolled. This right here, just so the dunkers out there know. This, so you know, yo, Steve, why you keep bringing it up? Because every time I just present it very gently, I just get a yo, good for him. They switched Giannis onto him. That's how it was going.
Yeah, he was very good. I don't. What do you? But yeah, 18 and 14. They pull up the box score. 18 and 14.
No, we're gonna because this man, we had a whole conversation. He said, "Nah, can't have any impact on defense. Doesn't have any juice left. Can't hit shots. Can't roll." I swear he did all those things yesterday.
He did. Like, what do you want me to say? He had a good game. I don't know what you.
Don't worry about it.
What do you want me to say? He knocked that.
How'd you feel about Nick Claxton's game? Because I was encouraged. I liked the flashes that he had. And I think defensively, he may have more of an impact on Drew and Middleton, which may have more of an impact for Brooklyn. The couple, I think the flashes he had against Giannis, it didn't go like as bad as I thought it might have gone. I think he had an ISO where he gave up space. He's kept him in front. The only problem is if you give Giannis space, he's going to deliver the first blow. And even if Claxton contests, it's going to be tough. But I thought overall he brought the energy, and his ability to contain those two could do good things for Brooklyn, especially if Milwaukee continues to attack them, which I didn't understand. You know, they had other pressure points, and they're putting Nick Claxton in action, which was very curious to me. But shooting variance. Didn't make enough threes.
They also did not make enough threes. But no, to your Claxton point, like it was mixed bag-ish to me. Like he did look fine on those switches on the perimeter. I didn't really love the Giannis matchup. Like I think that first ISO cleared out for him. Giannis kind of delivers the blow. Claxton flies back a little bit. Giannis sprinkles in the jump hook over him. And it's just like, this is what I was worried about. And like Giannis didn't have much issue moving him, which is why I really don't love that particular matchup. It's interesting to me that Claxton did look better moving his feet and just kind of forcing Drew and or Chris into tough looks. That also kind of highlights the shortcomings with Drew and Middleton. Like neither of those guys, like Drew is a very strong driver. He's not an explosive driver. He's not a blow-by guy. He'll get y'all balanced and he's got his shoulder in your chest. And then he can kind of bully his way to the rim. And he has tricks around the rim, great footwork, up fakes and all that good stuff to kind of get what he needs to get. But he's not your classic speed by you dude. Chris has never been a speed by you dude. He also doesn't have like an elite handle. So it's very much let me get 2 inches of separation because that's all I need because I have a high release point on my jumper and I'm 6'8". You know, Nick Claxton is taller than him. So that is kind of neutralized. And again, Chris isn't explosive on his own right. So it's not like Claxton's being threatened to be blown by. So that's going to be something to monitor in game 2 moving forward. Because if he can hang on those switches and you have someone else that can kind of bang with Giannis, or if it's just a second unit where Giannis isn't on the court, then Claxton has, I think Claxton has a pathway to having an impact. Like one of the things I wrote about during that season primer or whatever, like I was worried about Claxton. I said, I think the phrasing was like, I see a pathway to him being played off if he just can't deal with the physicality that Giannis brings.
Let me check that out real quick. Give me 1 second.
Gotta pull up the article. But yeah, I think I made the
keep going. I'm just gonna look this up real quick. Give me 1 second.
Oh, okay. While you do that, yeah, I think the phrase was like, I can see a pathway in which he gets played off if he just can't deal with that kind of physicality. And that, I mean, that point is neutralized if he spends more time switching out on the perimeter and dealing with Milwaukee's threats that way, as opposed to getting like 100% of the Giannis assignment. So with that, I think that part of it was fine. Have you found the line?
There are avenues in which either guy could get played off the floor.
Yeah, there we go.
Speaking of avenues, do you have an avenue for any of that CJ McCollum slander to transfer to Chris Middleton?
Chris was very, very bad.
Yes, no, any of that applies? Any of those points maybe slide on over to the left, possibly?
Is there anything in particular that you are referring to?
Not just in general, kind of the concept of the scoring and maybe having to score at a certain level to produce, and if you don't score at that level, then you're not doing very well. Something like that. You said something like that.
I see. Well, Chris not scoring buckets is obviously a problem. And when he was ball watching the way that he was during game one, that's also a problem. I do not think he is or really has ever been a CJ level defender. So I don't have that kind of smoke. And just with the difference of the size in general, like I don't think he can be as destructive as CJ can be in certain matchups. But there are no excuses for game one, Chris Middleton. He was bad, period. Shot didn't fall. Bad shots were taken. The defense wasn't up to par. He was bad.
So the slander doesn't apply. All right, that's fine.
What do you?
How concerned are you about the Nets others being able to keep this up? On one hand, KD and Kyrie probably could play a lot better. On the other hand, can you get this from Mike James again? Not just, I mean, you're going to get the FGAs, but can you get the dribble penetration? Can you get that kind of creation? Can you keep him on the floor? Can you get that kind of effort from Blake Griffin? I don't know if he's going to make 4 threes again, but can you get that kind of rallying effort? I mean, you had a situation where Blake is drawing standing O's and roars from the Barclays crowd for his effort diving on the floor, and you got Mike James getting the biggest oohs and ahs for a crossover. Can they get enough from those guys over the course of the series to make this work?
I mean, they can. I don't know how much I would bet on that. Like with Blake in particular, you mentioned like the 4 threes, like that seems like a high mark. Like he's gonna have those looks.
Here it comes.
But what do you?
Here it comes, folks. Here it comes. Okay. He couldn't give no credit, but he sure got something on the other side.
What do you? I tried to give him credit. You were like, no, never mind. So I don't know. What do you want me to say about Blake Griffin?
I'll continue with the point. I'm listening.
We can have the discussion. What do you want me to say about Blake?
I just like you to give the man some version of credit. That's more than good for him. He did good.
I literally said he had a really good game. Like I don't. What more do you want me to? He was very good. He knocked down shots. He gave you some juice as a roller. Like there was one empty corner pick and roll to which he got the dunk. Brook Lopez got blown by on the drop. Like he got that highlight. The energy and effort was there. Like he fought against Giannis. Didn't particularly go well all the time, but he fought against Giannis. He got some loose balls, brought some energy, got the crowd into it, got the players got them pumped up, crashed the glass, helped spark some fast breaks for Brooklyn, particularly in that second half when they were really ready, that second quarter and in the second half when they were ready to get going and push that way. He was very good.
That's a lot better. See, how hard was that, bro?
I don't. I said he played well, and that just wasn't. I don't know.
It wasn't good enough after the dismissive way. I was dismissed and laughed off the pod when I presented this to you months ago. It's fine though. Don't worry about it. I'm not bitter. So this is a scenario where Milwaukee likely is able to bounce back. Like, I don't know if this is a series shifting win for Brooklyn. It's a good win, but I don't think this is a series shifting win just because you have Middleton and Holiday who can play better, and the Bucks should shoot the ball better. I am concerned about their other guys, their second unit guys. Like, we know what Milwaukee can do when their big three has it going, but I don't know who else it's going to be. Like, they need, I guess, a fifth guy offensively, because Brooks going to crash the glass, be a monster inside. I feel pretty good about his role in this series. Who's the fifth guy? Is it PJ making threes? Is it Bryn Forbes doing enough to stay on the floor? Because technically he should be it. Is it Pat Connaughton? Is it Bobby Portis? Like, that's where it gets interesting, because it almost turns into a battle of the others in a sense. Because those guys their top guys are going to trade baskets. You can make it tough on KD and Kyrie, but they're KD and Kyrie. They're going to still find a way. Correct. So I feel like this is going to be a margin series to me.
Yeah, I think the best bet for the fifth for Milwaukee is going to be Bobby Portis, just because Brooklyn wants to switch everything. And if they're going to switch everything, like, he is the guy on that second unit that can abuse those switches, because Pat Connaughton isn't going to do that. Jeff Teague is not going to do that.
Yeah, you're going at Jeff Teague, man. What did Jeff Teague do to you?
Everyone went after it's whatever. Anyway, he's not going to do that. Bryn Forbes is not going to do that. Like, he's a movement shooter. He's going to need some gaps to fly into. And if you're switching against him, he's not beating guys off the dribble or anything like that. You don't want Bryn Forbes self-creating a lot. So I think it's going to have to be Bobby Portis as terms of that fifth light score role. And again, if you get some matchups with, like, if it's with Blake in particular, not even Blake, if they're in a drop, if Brooklyn's in a drop at all, whether that's with Blake or with Claxton, if it's like early offense, they just drop in instinctively or whatever, like, those are your pockets to get Bryn Forbes going, or just in transition when he's filling the wings, hitting them early. That's where he gets it going. But, like, he's not going to self-create.
You know, self-create openings for the Brooklyn offense.
Yes.
All right. But I feel good. I feel like I got enough hashtag we saw you in for this one as far as Blake Griffin goes. I'm going to take my opportunities when I can, because I'm going to post the clips on the timeline at some point, so maybe people understand. It's fine. Let's go ahead. Let's recalibrate. Let's get in the zone. Let's go ahead and throw it to Atlanta's very own.
So, like, is this just going to be a reoccurring thing to where you're just setting up Atlanta's very own in various ways?
Oh, 1,000%. There's no doubt, especially when your boy in the Philadelphia stands was given a full Ric Flair woo in the middle of hostile territory with, I believe, someone was with them throwing the towel around. Beautiful sight. But yeah. Mr. AVO, hashtag, hit him up.
I think that guy is Mr. AVO, if anything. If you're going to go into Philadelphia of all places and give that kind of energy, you deserve that moniker a lot more than I do, as someone that doesn't even live in Atlanta. So,
you've earned it, though. The Trae Young show, I'll tell you that much. Before you even start, Trae Young was beyond incredible. I thought I was being, like, hyperbolic, prisoner of the moment. I thought he had a really, really good game for the majority of it. I don't know if the box score is going to necessarily reflect it as much as he was in complete control of that game. Complete control of that game. As far as in the first half, even the third quarter, doing whatever he wanted in pick and roll. And coming in on the preview pod, we talked about what is Philly going to do. Maybe the size and length will help against Trae Young. Maybe that'll be a concern. That was holding me back. I was wrong. I got to take the L on that. He was leading the dance. Joel beating the drop, floater, lobs. Tobias Harris became a defensive liability. But side note, by the way, Philly, let me talk about that for a second. And I understand why maybe you didn't want to switch after a couple more possessions, but you have Danny Green on Trae Young. You have Tobias Harris on John Collins. Your size and length is supposed to allow you to be switchable in the playoffs. You have Tobias Harris in a drop, which is opening up Trae Young to do whatever he wants and John Collins to start get rolling. What are you doing? But then they switched Tobias Harris onto Trae Young, and Trae Young went right by him and threw a lob to Capella. So maybe that's not the answer. But I mean, it was insane. Like some of the clips looked like it was like right from the Knicks series. Come off, double drag, Biggs dropping back. Yeah, I'm just gonna take my floater. I'm gonna take my pull up. Yeah. The best coverage for Philly was probably Embiid at the level dropping back, but Trae Young was just decisive. I'll let you go, Mr. Avio. I didn't mean to steal your spotlight. I just want to give you some time to gather yourself, get your things ready.
Okay. I was actually gonna start. Like, I want to start with Trae Young, but I want to start with Trae Young from Philly's point of view. I did not understand the lack of Ben Simmons on Trae Young. I will start there.
Oh, let me help you. It didn't do anything. As currently presented, it doesn't have an impact. The only impact Ben Simmons on Trae Young has is if he's able to navigate screens. They put him on him, and immediately there was a trap. Then what's the point of having Ben Simmons on Trae Young? You're giving up the same exact thing you would have if you had Danny Green on him. It's a pocket pass.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point in putting Ben Simmons on Trae Young if Tobias Harris doesn't have a defensive coverage that works for him. He ended up having to be in a trap, which opened up a pop for John Collins. So the impact for Ben Simmons on Trae Young is going to be, can he get into his body? Can he navigate the screens, either going over or under, mixing that up, getting back in front to where Joel Embiid can release his drop and he can at least be there on the side. He can contest the floater, where she had a couple good possessions of doing that. But I think that point is overblown because of how Philadelphia is guarding Trae Young. This isn't like a one-on-one type deal. Like, it's going to be pick and roll. And until Philadelphia can figure out what they want to do scheme-wise, you're not going to get the same juice out of Ben Simmons on Trae Young that you would think you would. You know what I mean? It's just, there's not the same impact. The best impact is going to be him being able to go over the screen, get back, not let Trae lead the dance, contest the floater, or at least send him into Embiid. That I'd agree with, but it's not going to be a series shifter because you don't have the coverage in yet. You don't have your defense set. They're still exploiting it. So, I mean, it's the same thing with Tybal. But they got 90 people they can throw at him. But it doesn't matter how many people you got. If the scheme ain't working.
So here's what I would say to that. Like, I agree that similar exploits can be there, but there are ways to at least limit some of the exploits being hit. And what? Because my thing with Ben Simmons on Trae Young is that, like, I just don't think Danny Green has the foot speed to even get those review contests in a way that pressures Trae like that. Like, I think Joel Embiid looked shaky in the drop. And this is something that I talked about heading into the series. Like, if his knee is compromised, like, he's not going to be able to come up to the level consistently and deter him in a way. And I felt like that would open up, the floaters would still be there for Trae, but they would be a little bit easier because Joel would be further back than like the Knicks played it. And I think I made that reference on the pod. Like, obviously Joel's a better defender than Nerlens Noel or a better defender than Taj Gibson, but both of those guys at least played those screens a step or so higher. And Joel couldn't really do that.
He was at the level multiple times. They alternated it. Depending on the second half, he'd mix in the traps at the level. Continue.
So I'm just like, at the very least, even if Ben navigates the screen to the same level of Danny Green, Ben can recover better than Danny Green can, and also has more length to throw. You could,
I'm agreeing with you. That's his impact if he does that. But if that's the only impact. If you're gonna put 2 on the ball, there ain't no point. Right?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if they're going to be in the drop at least, like, it just makes sense to have the guy that can recover quicker. I don't think Danny Green is the solution for Trae Young. I don't think Trae Young has a solution anyway. He's that good, but like, I don't think Danny Green should be the primary defender.
That's
I just,
fine. That's
I just,
fine. But Ben Simmons he's not the answer. Because okay, say Ben Simmons does do a great job of recovering and getting in front and they figure that out. You still have Tobias Harris on the floor. And that at best is a trap.
I think they should lean into those traps for the 1-4 pick and rolls. Like, I think that's just what you have to do. I don't think you can switch Tobias.
Okay, so you trap him and then what opens up?
I mean, it opens up the part. Like, you have to live with something. Like, that's the beauty of Trae Young.
But that's what Trae Young did all day. He picked them apart. That's the point I'm making.
I get it. You have to. Trae Young is very good. I agree. Like, you have to live with something when it comes to Trae. Like, first quarter.
Yes, I agree. You do have to live with something. What are we living with? What's the trap going to do?
Like, I would rather get beat by John Collins than Trae Young.
But John Collins caught it, and now it becomes what? A big lob to Capella or a skip pass. That's where Atlanta's been really good. Making defenses pay, making the defense pay, forcing help to pay. So Trae Young makes the automatic read. Now they play out of it. That's what makes Atlanta tough. The mixture of all those things. But continue.
What would you suggest Philadelphia does?
You got to mix your coverages against Trae Young. So Embiid's got to be at the level. You have to find something for Tobias. If it's a trap, that's fine. If he's showing at the level, that's fine. But it can't just be an automatic. They just have to do a better job on that end. So let's say they trap him every time, which they did. Does that contain Trae Young?
I at least think that takes him away as a scorer a little bit.
Perhaps. But are you going to do the trap with Joel Embiid?
No, I don't think you trap with Joel.
What do you do with Joel?
I think you try to play him a little closer to the level.
I agree. He has to be at the level. But this is the yin and yang of it. They can, because of Tobias struggling, you now have 2 guys you can truly use as rollers. So say, hey, they get this thing going with Tobias. They start trapping, it works. We'll just go back to putting Embiid in action. And say hey, we get that going. We'll go back to putting Tobias in there. You know what I mean? It's going to be back and forth. So they're going to have to be solid, whatever they want to do it, however they want to do it. They're going to have to be more solid and throw different things at them to keep them out of rhythm. They never got him out of rhythm. But continue.
You got it. I don't know. Like,
well, of course I have it, but what do you think? That's not breaking news that I have it. Give me your opinion. What are you talking about?
Oh, but no, like that's what my primary takeaways coming out of that game. Like, if I'm Philly, with those 1-4 pick and rolls, they were just too easy for Trae to abuse. Like, you can't have Tobias in a drop. That's just not gonna work. I say anytime Tobias Harris is involved in a pick and roll, like, you just trap with that. Okay. You just force the ball out of his hands there. And again, my other point, I don't think Danny Green can get those review contests if they're going 1-5 pick and roll to begin with. Like, I just don't think he can navigate and then also recover in that way. So I think Philly needs to throw more Ben.
What do you think about Philadelphia's random doubles towards the end of that crazy game? Is that maybe a way to keep Trae Young out of rhythm or no?
I think it can be.
I mean, the problem is they just mix up so many different things where all of a sudden, anytime Philadelphia gets in rhythm, now it's a double drag with Curry's man as the first screener, and now Embiid's man's the second screener. So now you may have been at the level, now he's dropped back. Like, Philadelphia just has to be more locked in on the defensive end, for me. Like this to me was a big defense game for Philadelphia. That was the biggest thing my eyes went to. I didn't really worry about the offense. By the time Atlanta punched them in the face so quick,
yeah,
it was one of those things where they continue to score, they continue to get it going. I don't mind the traps. I don't mind the traps at all, but that's going to put a lot of pressure on Philadelphia to rotate. And that's going to open up a lot of movement opportunities for Atlanta, which they're good at. But to your point, and I'll give you this, you do need to try something because we saw what New York did where they just continue to try and do the same thing and it never worked. So I'll give you that. But even the shows and recovers, I just didn't love Philadelphia's rotations out of it. I thought it opened up a lot of plays for Atlanta in this game.
I feel you. Like, they definitely need to be tighter. But those were just the two things that stood out to me that just didn't make much sense on the surface. Because even I was going to say, like, even going through like the regular season film, like Danny was the primary defender on Trey. Like Danny didn't look good at it, and this was during the regular season. So I kind of came into it.
Let me check his age real quick.
How does that even count as slander? We just got a repeat in game 1.
Just give me a second. Computer a little slow. Sorry.
Okay, I see. I just don't think this is the matchup for Danny Green. Is my early take. I'm gonna need to rehash it for a third time.
33. This tracks. Okay, so who do you put Danny Green on? Well, we'll just continue to explore this.
Who we put that? Let's map out the matchups here. Because it was Ben on Bogey, which I didn't really love either. Like, I would just probably swap that. Go Danny Green on Bogdanovich. Go Ben Simmons on Trey.
Who you put Tobias on?
Tobias is going to be an issue, period. I think Tobias got the John Collins matchup.
Do you see Matisse Thybulle as possibly being an option to help?
It's going to depend on how many shots he makes ultimately. Like, I think between everyone that had a crack at Trae Young in the game, like, I think he probably had the best reps against them. So he absolutely has a role. It's just going to be balancing that role, making sure that he's able to do so without getting into foul trouble, and then also making enough shots on the other end. Because, again, if you have Matisse Thybulle on Trae Young, that also means Trae Young gets to defend Matisse Thybulle. And that's basically just giving Trae active rest on defense. Because Philly's not using him as a screener. And it's not like he's running off of pin downs or anything and threatening Atlanta in any way as a shooter. And he's also not getting on-ball reps to attack Trae. You're not going to post him up or anything like that. So it's basically Matisse in the corner with Philly doing whatever they want to do, and Trae just gets to sit and rest. So that's just a tight rope for Doc Rivers in particular to walk. Speaking of Doc, an all-bench lineup in a postseason game is not something you should. If you have Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, and Ben Simmons, like, if they're not hurt or in foul trouble, one of them should be on the floor at all times.
We doing this?
Like, that just seems like low-hanging fruit. I'm sorry.
Why is it low-hanging fruit?
How is it not low-hanging fruit? Those are your three best players, and all three of them generate offense in some kind of way. It would probably be helpful to not have, like, George Hill having to be your offense.
That's also George Hill slander.
It's not. We talked about this on the pod. Like, George Hill is someone that thrives when someone else bends the defense for him. Gotcha. He can catch and shoot, or he can attack a scrambling defense. Like, he's not run 15 pick and rolls in this quarter and create. That's not what he's best at.
So is this an issue at the start of the fourth quarter that you had?
I could pull up the lineup data to be more specific.
Because I want to say Tobias and Joel played the whole third, maybe, or at least most of it. And Tobias is usually the guy who.
I think this was like end of first, early second is when that lineup was out there. It's an all bench.
Because I thought they went to it at the start of the fourth too.
But that would also be an indictment. But again, like I don't think that's even like a big brain point. It's like one of your three best players should be on the floor.
So what do you do if they're in foul trouble?
If you're in foul trouble, then you just got to mix and match the best that you can. But if they're not,
so how do you prepare for those moments?
How do you prepare for your players being in foul trouble? Or
how do you get your bench guys? Like you have to play your bench guys at some point because you're going to need them.
Yeah, but like there are ways to stagger them, right?
Correct. But if for some reason maybe the run went too long or you're getting beat or you're trying to come back, whatever it is, I don't understand why the grief is the whole bench unit. Did Atlanta have their whole bench unit in?
I don't think so. I want to say one of Trey and Bogdanovich was on the floor just about all the time. If I remember correctly, there was like a Lou Bogdanovich backcourt.
So 4 out of 5 makes a difference?
So what?
Because 4 out of 5 makes a difference because they weren't running any much through Bogdanovich, were they?
There was a lot of Lou.
So let's say, hey, you throw Ben Simmons out there with the bench, it doesn't go well. Now you've wasted Ben Simmons minutes.
Then you lose at that point. But I would want to have one of my better players out there.
Yes, you would want to have one of your better players out there. I'm giving you the other side of it because you're very strong about, hey, all bench units are terrible, and you have to go to them sometimes. Like these things have to happen. Eventually, at some point, you're going to have to play all 5 of your guys.
Do you, though?
No, you're right. You don't.
No,
what are you talking about? Do you know how rotations work? Like, yes, eventually you're going to be in a situation where all 5 of your bench guys are out there for 1, 2, maybe 3 minutes. Maybe you're trying to steal minutes. Maybe you're trying to get someone to blow. Maybe it's not working. It happens. Like, that's just part of the game.
All right. Fair enough.
Like the whole, it's like,
Go on.
Why is it such a massive deal? You got to explain that to me.
A massive deal?
Yeah.
I just feel like you want to optimize your lineups, and having one of your best players on the floor at all times seems to be a way to do that.
Okay, but what would the impact have been on this game if Tobias Harris was out there for those 3-minute stretches? What would have changed?
Maybe you have more of a coherent plan on offense if you have Tobias out there.
But offense wasn't even the problem.
I get it. I mean, you asked me what could change.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you present it as this huge, massive problem, when really it was what? I mean, Atlanta's bench had a great run, but like, why is it always the thing? Like, someone has to explain that to me.
No, I don't. You'd have to ask someone making it the thing. I'm just making it a point. It is a part of why.
All right.
If we're talking about what Philly could do better, like I feel like that's a part of some improving the game too. Like,
you're right.
Okay. Did you have anything else on Philly or Atlanta?
Are you worried about Clint Capella?
Worried in what context?
Worried about his ability to have an impact on this series because he has to guard Joel Embiid and be more engaged and potentially will get in foul trouble.
Not super worried yet. I will say I feel like Joel let him off the hook with some of those like face-up jumpers. Like, I think the early directive for Joel should just try to be to get Clint in foul trouble, because if Clint is in foul trouble, Atlanta doesn't have a soul that can defend him. So
I didn't like Atlanta's baseline doubles.
I feel like they came a little early.
The timing was off. They were helping off Seth Curry a lot more than they should have been. It was weird. So I will be very interested to see how Capella handles the rest of his series. Not just foul trouble wise, but if Embiid gets going, like he can't have the same help that he usually has. It'll be interesting.
All right, fair enough. I would also add Atlanta being able to steal game one. Well, first and foremost, the end of the game was an absolute mess. I have no idea what happened to Atlanta in the last like 2 minutes in which they could not bring the ball up the court without throwing up over themselves. But they were able to steal the win. Being able to do so with DeAndre Hunter being a late scratch, like I felt like he was going to play a pretty big role in this series. Missed game one. Solomon Hill stole some solid minutes in the first half, at least.
That's Solomon Hill slander.
I don't think that's Solomon Hill slander.
Let me check his age real quick.
What do you Heat legend Solomon Hill? I don't have a bad thing to say about him. I will let you do your search. How old is Solomon Hill?
He's 30 years old. This tracks.
Okay. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what to do with that. But no. Big win for Atlanta, doing so without one of their better / most important players. Trey was very good. Bogdanovich hit some very clutch shots. Shout out to John Collins making some short roll reads in this game and doing so quickly and in the rhythm. Something that I've been questioning with him for most of the season, really. So for him to have a couple of high lows, I think that's a positive development. And to your earlier point, if Philadelphia does trap and if John Collins is able to make those plays consistently, then Philadelphia's just kind of in trouble. Because you have to be able to take away something. And if you can't take away anything, then Atlanta's just kind of have you scrambling all game long.
Only concern with Atlanta is just relying too much on just the exploits that they get from the scheme. The Knicks could never get them in a position to make it worry, but that during that kind of that run before everything kind of went haywire, it felt like they were just going a little too hard in that direction. They got to keep executing. They can't go to prevent offense. But I thought for Philadelphia to be able to get back in that game and even have a chance is probably a positive. They can roll through, but their defense got to be a lot better to get them back in the series.
Fair enough. Do we want to move the Clippers-Mavericks?
Sure. Let's go right there, pal.
We got a game 7 on Sunday afternoon. A 15-point win from the Clippers. We got 46 and 14 from Luka. We got 28 and 10 from Kawhi. We got 22, 10 and 6 from Paul George.
We got 6 points from the Dallas bench.
Yuck.
No one played more than 10 minutes. Maybe also, you need to use those guys. Maybe those guys need to be able to play so they can contribute and have success, as opposed to the Clippers who got production from Terrence Mann and Luke Kennard. Just saying. Those guys are important this time of year.
Would have been helpful. A striking 2 points from Jalen Brunson. Maxi Kleber gave him next to nothing. No points from Trey Burke. Josh Richardson with another short stretch in which he didn't do much of anything on offense. It just felt like the Mavericks just kind of, they were scrambling for like something, some kind of counter, and they didn't really have it. But they continued to start Boban, was able to get some good things out of that, the high pick and rolls and getting him those early slips against the traps. And it just ended up turning into the Luka show. Once the Clippers were able to kind of adjust to that, and Luka started hot, faded late. And by then, the Clippers got rolling on the other end.
Dallas went too much with their zone defense. They relied on it too much. The Clippers were able to get their reads, get in the rotation, move the ball, find the open man to get shots. And then they couldn't really activate anyone else. I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr. couldn't necessarily get going. Dorian Finney-Smith had some nice pick and pop threes, but they didn't necessarily have an exploit. Boban rolling was great. That's early in the first half, he was able to finish and make kicks, but then the second half, he was just finishing. And then the Clippers were able to put Batum on him and sometimes just switch it. Or the traps, they mixed it in pretty well. But when it was just Luka, it looked great in the first half, but no one else was really used in a way to have an impact. And then you couldn't mix in your bench lineup. I mean, I think there was a time where he was just searching. I think he subbed in Trey Burke, and then he subbed Boban back in, then he subbed Luka back in. So he's just trying to find it. But that was a heck of a win for the Clippers. Kawhi, very silently, was very, very good over the whole series, especially these last 3 games. Paul George, how about it? I mean, his drive's very important this series. Very, very important this series. I thought Terrence Mann, the energy he gave them in that first half, the points were important, but the energy he gave them was huge. And then salute to Marcus Morris. I mean, not just for the 7 threes. I mean, you think about game 6, they asked this man to, hey, yo, man, guard Boban. And then we're going to also need you to switch on to Luka. And we're going to also need you to make some shots. He did maybe 2 out of those 3 things in game 6.
A tall task.
He came back and he made the shots they need him to make. Reggie Jackson, every now and then contributed, still swinging playoff series. So that's the win the Clippers needed. Now, I'm very interested to see what they'll do next round, but I'm sure we'll touch on it. Dallas, 43 minutes for Tim Hardaway, 43 minutes for Porzingis, 45 for Luka. Like, you could have used, if there were a hypothetical world where maybe you should have maybe had a bench unit that you could have thrown out there and get you 2 or 3 minutes to get you to the next step, let those guys get a rest. Today would have been a good day for it, but they never went to it, and those guys tired out and didn't have anything when the Clippers made their run. But what do I know? Folks, what do I know? The hashtag is big unknown.
Are we adding that to the list of hashtags for the show?
I hope so. I'm losing track.
We'll go to the Dunker Spot Pod account. We'll update the list, make a running tally of hashtags. But I have a question for you.
What's up?
There's been a lot of Kristaps Porzingis talk over the past 48 hours. And we indulged in some Kristaps talk on Friday. And just perusing the box score. 16-11 for him today. But where are you on Kristaps as a player?
He's a very talented player. He's very tall. He can make defenses pay if he's at the 5. He's a guy you can run off screens, you can run off handoffs, you can move him at the elbow. You can do a lot of things with him. It just depends on how you want to make it work. Defensively, still a work in progress, but it's pretty good to me.
I also think he's pretty good. I think he has very clear flaws, particularly as a self creator. And I think that leaves him susceptible to what the Clippers were able to do to him in this series with kind of neutralizing him with the switches.
Oh, yeah, it's a bad matchup.
It was not a great matchup for him. But as someone who has criticized Kristaps for his ineffectiveness against those switches, it also kind of feels like it's going too far in that direction in terms of judging Kristaps as a player. Because while he has those flaws, I do think he brings positive impact as a shooter, a floor spacer, not just as a guy that can stand around and spot up, but as you mentioned, can come off screens, can bring some juice as a movement shooter. I just wonder. I wonder what his next step is offensively, to where he can't be taken out in that way.
I mean, it's just got to. I mean, it's going to have to be. I'm not going to go Charles Barkley and say it has to be a deep post game, but it has to be the ability to, at the very least, make defenses pay. The problem in this series was, and I thought the Clippers did a great job of limiting his impact from the start. They just said, anything you do, we're going to switch. Because the real secret sauce of Kristaps is pick and roll. You don't know if he's going to pop. You don't know if he's going to roll. That opens up a lot of different things where he can be a pressure point. And you got to worry about him, especially with Luka. But the Clippers took that off the table. So all that off the table. So then he became just a space guy. Or post up, hopefully he gets 2 dribbles and goes right up and it goes in guy, as opposed to just using him differently. So I don't necessarily love that it becomes this referendum on him as a player if you're not going to give the context of why he struggled or why he didn't have an impact. If you want to say he's bad, that's your opinion. I'm not in the business of changing people's opinions in 2021 unless you slander someone's name and say you can't play defense, then I'm going to come at you. But
I see.
But this is where, I mean, for me, we talked about it on Friday. I just didn't feel like he was being used in a way where he could have an impact on this series. If he's just going to be used in the same way as Maxi Kleber, stand in the corner, then you might as well play Maxi Kleber. What's the point? What are you getting out of it? He's not a pressure point. So I'd rather salute the Clippers than just say, oh, Kristaps Porzingis is terrible. He can't be number 2. Like saying the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade is now the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing that? They're both really good. Like, why? Like, just call out the Mavs next trade. I don't understand. I understand why that's a thing. Like, the man was in the corner for half the series, just standing and watching.
This is true. So, like, on one hand, I'm just trying to strike the balance between him being parked in the corner and how that is obviously limiting to kind of be there, but also him being in the corner because of the limitations that he has. So I do think.
What are you trying to balance there?
Like, I understand the frustration of him not being more involved offensively, but this is also what I asked on Friday is like, okay, what are the avenues if the Clippers are going to switch everything, which takes away the pop / roll threat and pick and roll, at least compared to what he does against like drop coverage or whatever. If you're switching and taking away those pockets, and if you're going to switch all the off ball screens, which takes away like the pockets that'll be created if he's flying off pin downs or whatever, then it's like, okay, what is the way to use him? Because from there.
You just asked me that question. What's one of your most favorite sayings in the world?
The best way to be to switch to the slip.
Use him to slip screens. Use him to slip pin downs. There's other ways to use him outside of just spacing the floor. Just my thought. I mean, it was a situation where they were leaned on Luka, and because they were switching Kristaps and they didn't want to go to the post and it was an advantage, they kept going to Luka and KP was in the corner. Like, he could have played better. He could have made some more shots. It would have been nice if they could have thrown it to the post or gotten it to the elbow and known he could have gotten a bucket, but they didn't feel confident in it. Clippers had the wings and the guys to keep the ball in front and contest or make it a tough off-balance shot. And what are you supposed to do? If you're not going to use them, I mean, how many times was he in Spain pick and roll?
Not often.
They ran it a lot.
If at all.
They ran it a lot. I saw everybody and their mom in it over the 7 game series. I never saw Kristaps. How much empty corner stuff did he have? When he was in there with the bench unit, what did he do? How'd they use him? What was his action? What was his go-to play? What was the point of playing with the second unit? You could have gone all bench if you're going to use him like someone who's off the bench.
This is true.
Because I speak the truth. So people got to understand. Never mind.
I was waiting on the full-blown WWE promo. What happened?
No, I didn't have one.
Uh,
But no, man, like it's just, it bothers me, man. Player has a bad series. Examine why they had the bad series instead of pointing and say, 4 rebounds. Analysis. Get some analysis. Watch some games. Come on.
Hashtag watch the games. There we go. It seems like a natural transition point to the next series involving the Clippers.
Ooh, how do you feel about this one? This is going to be a very interesting series.
It is like, I wonder, as we kind of briefly touched on the Clippers bench, like there was no Patrick Beverly. And as I was going, there was no Pat Bev. And as I was going through like Clippers Jazz clips from the season,
Pat left. I just had to get a shot up. I've been upset.
I see. But yeah, all three of the Jazz Clipper games from the regular season happened before the trade deadline, which was interesting to me. But going through those clips, like Patrick Beverly got the Donovan Mitchell assignment a lot. So I wonder if the Clippers dust him off around 2 and just say, hey, irritate Donovan until you just can't do it. Or until Donovan proves that it's not going to matter. And if it's not that, then do you start with one of Kawhi or Paul George on Donovan from the opening tip?
Well, that brings me, that's a good question. I would imagine it might be PG more than Kawhi. I don't think they would start Kawhi on him right from the jump. They probably keep that in their back pocket. That's usually what they like to do. Now, I'm more interested, and I'm fascinated in what direction do the Clippers go lineup-wise. So you had to go small to survive this series. And you found some things that work in this series. And those are some things that can transfer to the Utah series. You know, when we talk about Utah, if there's 2 things that potentially they have struggled with, switching and drop. 2 things that can potentially slow them down. So I imagine they probably go back big, right? But if you start small and you switch the Rudy Gobert pick and rolls, at the end of the world, I'd be intrigued. I don't know which way they go. Because who do you take out of the lineup? Can't be Kawhi. Can't be Paul George. Can't be Batum. Like, I'd assume you'd have Batum and George on their guards, would be my guess. I'd assume you would have Batum and George on their guards if they go that way. Now, if they bring Zubac back in, you may be in a similar situation as far as guys shooting pull-ups in his face. Which I'm honestly probably just 1,000% sure that Zubac is pleased to never have to see Luka Doncic for at least multiple months. That man, I don't know if anyone out there can get the analytics and the Kyolytics on Luka Doncic's shooting percentage against Zubac. Woo! He was going after that man. But that's the fascinating part for me, because that's going to be the yin-yang. The Clippers have the size and length to be able to switch against Utah, and they have the ability to contain penetration, because that's Utah's counter. Now, if the Clippers can't contain penetration, this series could get ugly pretty quickly, because unlike Dallas, it's not necessarily going to just be the hero ball. That ball is going to move. You're going to have to keep guarding. And Dallas was searching for ways to get the Clippers in rotation. Utah knows the ways to get teams in rotation. And as we all know, it's automatic for the Utah Jazz. Once they get you in help, that ball is going to move. It's going to swing. So that's going to be interesting. Do they lean to take away the Rudy Gobert pressure point? Say, hey, we're going to switch. You're going to beat us off the dribble for 4 games to get this series win? Or do they start out traditional, see how it goes? Do you do the drops and hope that Utah stays in a pull-up fest? Because I think the drop may be more effective this series, even with the way that Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell have played and are playing, and the fact that Utah does like to go to the counter of a pull-up three, pull-up, they'll do the pull-up three if you're going to stay and drop. It's fine. They got about 5 or 6 guys who will do it. Can the Clippers live with that? Will the Clippers live with that? That's like my number one yin-yang there. Because in theory, they have guys with the size and length to potentially bother their top 2 guys. They have lineups that can take away some of the roles that Utah gets to. So that'll be interesting. But Utah's been doing this all year. There isn't much they haven't seen, and there isn't much they haven't been able to counter. So the hope for Utah is to continue to play their game and force the Clippers to continue to guard them. Are you worried about Utah on the other end?
A little, yeah, I am. Because as we've talked about Utah during the regular season, like one of the things I brought up is like it's the Royce O'Neal conundrum, in which Royce O'Neal is a very good defender, but if Royce O'Neal is your best perimeter defender, then that kind of leaves you a little lacking against some of the top of the West. And now we enter this Clippers Jazz series, and it's like Royce is going to defend Kawhi, point blank, period. That's just going to be the matchup.
Whoa, man. You forget who the real number 1 defensive stopper is on the Utah Jazz. Who's the guy they throw at everybody?
Poor boy. Oh boy, Boyan's gonna get some reps, buddy.
They're gonna throw Boyan at Kawhi. Watch.
I will just say that I do not anticipate that going very well if that ends up being the matchup.
Man, you gotta give Bogey some respect, man.
Bogey tries very hard. There's never a second that I watch him on defense. I'm just like, you know what? He could have given more effort. He could have tried to contest a little better than he did. There's only so much he can do against elite wings. Oh, also, while we're on elite wings, before I even dig back into this, I did pull up the matchup data on NBA.com. Luka Doncic shot 16 of 26 when defended by Zubac, 6 of 12 from 3. So it did not go very well when the big fella was switched out onto Luka.
Yikes.
That ain't great. But yeah, like I would anticipate Royce on Kawhi. And then from there, it just gets a little iffy on who you're putting on Paul George. Like one of the 2 wings is going to have an advantage pretty much whenever. I guess, well, I'll take that back. I'm curious to see if Utah is going to start Joe Ingles.
Yeah, but he should have been 6th man of the year.
He should have been. But, as with that being a regular season award and it's the postseason now, there's no postseason 6th man of the year award. So now you just play your best guys. So if you want to throw Joe in there full time, this might be the time to do so.
I think they might keep that in the back pocket just to keep their rotation, to keep that second unit, kind of the Mike, Clarkson, Ingles, Rudy, plus George lineup, just to have the rolling, the creators, the shooting, the balance there. You need that yin yang. Is this a concern? Because you've been concerned about the Clippers with rim pressure all year long. Mm-hmm. Is this a series where their pull-up game could actually favor them against Rudy Gobert?
I think so, because they have the talent to do so. And I don't think Utah is going to mix their coverages that much. So I think the Clippers are going to walk in knowing what they're getting. Off the top of my head, I don't think Utah is a heavy zone team either. So I think what they present is kind of what you're going to get. this should be a series in which Paul George and Kawhi in particular can just waltz. Well, maybe not waltz into pull-ups, but they'll have those pockets available. So I think this can be it.
Are you concerned about the Jazz late game against the Clippers defensively? With as far as having Kawhi and them having Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley out there, Clippers could go to the inverted pick and roll, have a guard screen, put them in action. Are you concerned about that for Utah?
I am concerned about that. I thought you were going to go the other way about what the late game offense for Utah might look like. Because I would imagine, even if the Clippers do start big, if they start with Zubac, like I would imagine they're probably going to close small. And I think that's when the Clippers decide to just switch everything at that point, just kind of take away those gaps that Utah wants to create. And that is where I get concerned for Utah, because the Clippers have the personnel to do that. On the other end, they could absolutely hunt Mike Conley, who, as good of a defender as he is, he's still like 6'1".
We're doing Mike Conley slander? Because
I literally just called him a good defender. I don't know.
This is gonna be the scrapper Scott. This is gonna be the scrapper spot, Brad. I'm gonna have to turn to one of them Paul brothers.
Not the Paul bro. I literally called him a good defender.
You snuck it in there.
I started the sentence with as good of a defender as he is. At any rate, Mike Conley is not Mike Conley is not as tall as Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. So therefore, it may be an issue if either of those two guys try to pick him late in games. So I do think the Clippers have some built-in options there. Also, if Rudy's on the floor, they're going to be able to get into some pull-ups and drop anyway. So I worry less about the Clippers being able to create quality looks late.
Okay, so you're worried about Utah's. So you're worried about Utah against the switches. Would you say that's a big one for you?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think Utah can beat the Clippers off the bounce, or is this going to be a scenario where they get stagnant, they get late in the clock, and now they're searching for something?
I think, again, the elephant in the room right now is I don't know how healthy Mike Conley is. So that's going to hover over until we get something.
He going to play, man. Man, play with a broken face.
Oh, I'm sure he'll play, but it's just like, oh, is he 80%? Is he 92%? Is he 88%? Is he 70%? That's where it gets a little tough with this matchup.
So you have the Clippers in 5?
I do not have the Clippers in 5, no. I have the Clippers in 6. But I don't know. Like, I think Donovan can kind of mismatch hunt and get to the rim. Conley can do that if he's healthy. But again, the health is kind of in question right now. And the Clippers also just have a lot of size. So it's a worrisome matchup for me.
I'm still very interested to see what the Clippers defense does when they're having to rotate to that kind of degree. Like I've always wondered about the switching, but the Clippers, when Dallas was able to get them in rotation, it didn't look great, and that's something they're going to have to be in at some point. They're going to go big at some point, so that's going to be an interesting point to me. I think I might go Utah in 7.
Ooh.
Actually, you know what? Let's have some fun. I'll go Utah in 6.
Utah in 6. Okay. I mean, they are the number 1 seed. They're a quality basketball club. Like
this is their worst matchup to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'll fall. Because I am with you that if the Clippers are in drop, like those rotations can be problematic if Utah's able to scramble them. I don't think the Clippers just aren't very fast. So if Utah's able to ping the ball around, like I think they're going to be able to create pretty clean looks, and they have shooters all over the place. But I do think once the Clippers go small, they can kind of neutralize at least some of that. And once they go small, I just think the Clippers have less questions than the Jazz do.
Okay, so you trust the Clippers. You trust the Clippers. Okay.
Typically a dangerous thing to do, but I do trust them. I do trust them in this series.
Okay. I like it. Now this is the Nekias West series that we're about to talk about.
I am fond of both of these teams. Phoenix, Denver is fun. Or it would be a little bit more fun for me if Denver was a little bit healthier. Because I am a little concerned. Just going through their film from earlier this year, like DeAndre Ayton didn't look completely out of place against Jokic. So it's going to be a similar deal to the Atlanta Philly series, in which if Ayton doesn't find himself in foul trouble, then I think Phoenix is going to be in a pretty good spot.
You like Ayton against Jokic?
As much as one can like Ayton as much as one can like anyone against Jokic, I guess, because Jokic is just that good. Because
I have concerns. Like it's not the same as Hope Anthony Davis can contest. Like the way this man is playing,
mm-hmm.
and the patience he can show, the strength, moving around the floor, spacing, is gonna be interesting. I want to see how the young fella handles it, but I'm a little concerned. And it's not as much Ayton as secondarily, who on earth would guard him after?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, they just don't have anyone behind Ayton that has a shot.
So it almost becomes a Portland-esque problem. Because, like, I mean, was it going to be Kaminsky?
No.
Oh, you want Bedario on him?
No. Like, the answer is going to be one of those two, but it's not a good answer. It's the point.
So that's going to be interesting. Do you think they double Jokic?
I think that's going to depend on who else is on the floor. One of the reasons, just going back through some of their earlier games, like one of the reasons why I'm not as concerned about Ayton as I normally would be, is I think a lot of the movement stuff that they were doing with Jokic, or whenever they had Jokic being used higher up on the floor, a lot of those actions also included Jamal Murray. So you had the should I take a step up, should I drop, that kind of thinking element for Ayton and trying to navigate that stuff, while also having to worry about what Jamal Murray's going to do if he gets the ball and he's kind of attacking off the bounce. And without that, I think it kind of simplifies Ayton's job to a degree. So I'm not as concerned about him looking lost.
How does it simplify his job? Give me some more on that, because Jokic does do a lot of things. Like, there's a point where Ayton's going to have to navigate pick and roll with Jokic handling it. Like, that's going to be different. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I guess more so with him being the role man. I don't think he's going to, I think it's just going to be, well, not just a drop, because Jokic can roll or pop. But I think
that's part of the dilemma. That's part of my concern.
That's part of the concern. I'm saying, like, I don't think he has to worry about the roll plus pop plus someone pulling from 28 feet. is my
No, he doesn't have to worry about that element unless those Denver guys establish themselves again.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yes, he doesn't have to deal with Jamal Murray coming off those screens, but he also has to deal with a little bit more of Jokic. So you're concerned about that. I'm concerned about Denver's guards in the series.
Okay. Where's your concern lie?
Phoenix is a better defensive team, and they have more size and length to be able to navigate some of those screens, to be able to navigate some of those actions, be able to switch some of those actions, whatever they got to do. It's a little bit different matchup for those guys. And I do think Phoenix can match Denver's second unit energy a little bit better. So I'm interested to see, can Denver get the same type of performances from some of those guys? Who do you think gets the Michael Porter Jr. matchup to start?
I think it's going to be Mikal Bridges.
Because I don't think Phoenix saw this version of Michael Porter Jr.
They did not, but I think they're just going to throw all of the limbs at him, especially since Phoenix, going back to the regular season matchups, it was Mikal Bridges on Jamal Murray. And now that he isn't there, like that frees up Mikal Bridges to kind of track Michael Porter Jr. over those staggers and kind of stick with him in that way. My question was going to be, do you think it's just Aaron Gordon that gets the Devin Booker assignment? Do you think it's Austin Rivers if he continues to start? Where would you go there?
Well, that's the interesting point, because my first reaction is to put Aaron Gordon on him. But the second part is Devin Booker coming off pick and roll is likely going to be a trap, or Jokic at the level aggressive two on the ball. How much do you want to have Gordon up there and your weak side be smaller guys? Mm-hmm. So that's something I'm concerned. I don't know if they go there from the start. Rivers would be interesting, at least to get a look. And also the other thing about Gordon on Booker is, with the way Phoenix uses Booker and the screening actions, the handoff actions, the angles of those screens, Gordon's going to have to navigate a lot more than he did against Portland when he was guarding Dame at times. So that opens up a whole different kind of thing where now Gordon's chasing. Now the defense has to rotate that way. So I don't know if you want to open that can of worms to start. I would understand if you did. But for me, I might give Rivers the first shot, see if my team defense can kind of make it work, and then keep Gordon in the back pocket as we need to. Here I go, a follow-up question. How do you think they guard Chris Paul? Actually, before you answer that, is his shoulder okay?
We'll see. Got to see how many pull-up threes he takes in game one. We can revisit that on the midweek pod.
Let me check his three. The what?
Oh, but no, like I would imagine it's going to be Campazzo to start, and just the battle of the irritants.
I don't think Campazzo wants to get into an irritant battle with CP3. Although this could lead to CP3 doing one of those CP3 things that he does, and then the whole timeline just falling down a rabbit hole as CP3 gets ejected. I don't want that to happen. But I wonder if they go to more, I wonder if they bust out some of the old Clippers plays as far as posting Chris Paul up. That's an interesting thing. I'm interested in that matchup. That should be fun. Irritating, but fun. That's one of those things where I don't know if both guys are going to be wrong at some point in this series. That's my prediction. They're going to have some sort of altercation, and the replay is going to show that both of them were wrong.
Both hooking the arms at the same time.
Yeah, something like that. But in pick and roll, how do you think they treat him? Because here's my dynamic in my head. You have Jokic. Best coverage is him at the level. Or trapping up there. He's got to be doing something, being active. Not so great when it comes to the drop. And the drop also opens up the mid-range, and the drop opens up the late roll for Ayton if he snakes, as we saw against the Lakers, where he just ends up finishing over a guard. I want to see how Denver handles that from the start. I don't anticipate them trapping, but I don't know if they want to let CP3 lead the dance.
That was actually going to be my question for you, because like I don't think Jokic is going. I don't anticipate them playing Jokic as highly as they normally do. Like it was
in general or against CP3.
I think in general.
Oh, Devin Booker has got to be.
Like,
if they're gonna put Jokic in a drop, it's over.
I don't think it has to be a drop. Like I could see them being like a step below the level, maybe not like a full drop. Because
Suns in 5.
So,
I promise you. If they do that, Suns in 5. I'll take the L if I'm wrong. But if they're gonna keep Jokic back and let him try and defend those two guys coming down with a little bit of space, they ain't got enough for this series.
As my counter is, like I just don't view as good as Chris Paul and Devin Booker are in pick and roll. Like I don't view them as like those 35 feet pull up. They're not Dame in terms of range. So that's where I'm just kind of like, maybe you don't have to play it as highly because the pull-ups that they may take aren't going to be as threatening as those to the rest of your defense.
Yeah, but the screens are going to be a little bit lower.
Okay.
Screen set 3-point line. What do you do now? Chris Paul's not getting super, super high ones unless they're trying to mix it up and try and get him downhill if he's struggling. But I don't like him not giving them attention, at least Devin Booker at the very least. After going against the Lakers defense, if you're going to put Jokic in a drop, it's not going to look the same. For me.
I got you.
Is this is this another Monty Morris series?
I think the backup point guard battle is going to be fun between him and Campaign. I could see him getting busy with the second unit.
Campaign hit the champagne.
Boo. Boo.
You gotta get a shot up. Nah, that should be a fun one. But what swings it? Because I think we all had the same questions. I feel like Phoenix is gonna feel a little bit of relief in the sense that they kind of got past their matchup, quote unquote. I feel like Denver is going to feel like they're playing with house money a little bit because even though they had the confidence themselves, I don't know if anyone really thought they would make it this far. And both of these teams have an opportunity to not just like make the conference finals. Like there's a chance. Like you could. This is the year if you're going to make a run to make a run.
Right.
I wonder how that's going to look. I'm very interested by game one. Like I anticipate Phoenix winning that one.
You think Phoenix takes game one?
I think Phoenix takes game one just because I think Denver usually has to adjust. It's going to be a different series for them. They're going to have to deal with a little bit more resistance. Like Phoenix is better equipped to play in the half court to do multiple things lineup wise. Now, this is me assuming Phoenix does certain things defensively. If they open up certain things and Jokic is able to get busy, it's anyone's game. Let's make that very clear. that boy Nikola can play. It's gonna be a fun one. Yeah, it came back. It came back. Every now and then. Jokic is a problem, man. I forgot about that pull-up three he hit in the fourth quarter. Oh, man. Is this going to be a short series or a long series?
I think it's going to be a long series. Because I think it's at least 6. Because my thing is, I think Denver has the best player in the series. They have Jokic, and with Jokic's skill set, like he can do his own thing and also involve the others and lift the floor there. but like Phoenix has so much talent, so much length in particular. It To answer your earlier question about what can swing it, like I think it's going to be the second unit front courts for both.
Michael Green, Paul Millsap.
Yeah, like if they're just better than what Phoenix has out there. So if they're able to knock down shots, then I think that's where it goes. Because I think for Denver, you're going to be asking for a lot of Monty Morris to begin with. Like you're going to need maybe that. Well, I say that's where you close your gap if you're Denver. I think Phoenix has a better starting unit, but that's where it is. You have the edge in the front court with Millsap, with JaMychal Green. You have Monty Morris. If you can get a random punch from anywhere else, then I think that's how you close your gap. And if it's a close game, if you can get it to clutch time, Phoenix has Chris Paul, they have Devin Booker, you have Nikola Jokic. And that can go either way. So I think that's probably where it swings for me. I think Denver's second unit can close the gap.
And see, that's the interesting part. That's where my concern is. Denver's second unit, Torrey Craig could be someone who turns the water off on someone. Mm-hmm. They're gonna have to guard. I just like. I'm trying to find the way for Denver to win outside of Jokic doing Jokic things in defense. Michael Porter Jr. is going to have a tougher time this series, even if they get him off handoffs and cuts because of Bridges, because of Crowder, that type of deal. And then it's going to have to be Denver's guards doing it again. And Phoenix's defense in the half court is a little bit tougher. Because we see the formula for Denver. It's going to be Rivers, it's going to be Morris, it's going to be those guys. I'm leaning more Phoenix right now. Jokic can swing it, but I'm leaning Phoenix. I think this is a series for them to kind of maybe get Denver in the mud a little bit. Now, Jokic is, of course, the wild card. And if those Denver guards do show up again and become threats, whole math changes. But I'm going to go Suns in 7 as of right now.
I have Suns in 6. I think we get the Suns in the Western Conference Finals.
Oh boy! So your dream, folks. It's going to be Hawks, Bucks, and it's going to be Suns, Clippers. That's your dream 4.
That's the 4 that I am anticipating right now.
If it's Hawks, Bucks, I'm gonna be the biggest troll in the world on this pod. There's not gonna be any real analysis coming from me.
What are you gonna troll about?
Everything. Well, you're Mr. AVO and you picked the Bucks to win the Eastern Conference, so I'm gonna have a field there.
Oh, I see. So it's just gonna be slander every pod at some point.
Oh, every piece of it.
I respect it. Get the Chris Paul revenge series in the Western Conference Finals. That'd be nice.
Oh, that would be interesting. Never thought about that.
Hey, there you go.
Man, I'm excited to see. Like, that's the problem. I wanted, like, the Atlanta-Philly game was such like I had so many questions going into it, and then I was like, ooh, this is a whole different thing. I feel like I'm going to be that way with Denver-Phoenix, and I feel like I'm missing something. I'm not afraid to admit that either. It's okay to not know stuff sometimes.
This is also very true. This is also why I have you on the podcast, because I very much do not know everything.
No, you know everything, bro.
Absolutely not.
Hashtag big time.
Absolutely not.
Hashtag big filter, big Ellie.
We I just fundamentally reject Big Ellie. I'm sorry. We're not rolling with that one.
That's not up to us, man. That's up to the dunkers.
I want to trust their judgment. I do. But if I see some big Ellie hashtags Monday afternoon, I'm not going to be a happy camper.
Wait till they hit you with the Mr. ABO and the big Ellie's.
Going to get hit with the hashtag big blocks. It's going to be great.
Oh, Matumbo. All right. I see.
Big mute, big report.
Report SP.
Oh, man. Can I just say, I am excited for I'm just excited for the second round. Like, it's such a unique blend of teams and talents.
Oh, you mean fun teams who play good basketball all year long, an intriguing series on both ends of the floor, an emerging play from young superstars instead of just ratings talk?
Yeah, it's almost like what the actual basketball is being played for.
If you think the league's not happy that they got a Trae Young showcase followed up by a Luka showcase and the Clippers won, I mean, come on. Come on. But whatever, watch the games. I'm not going to get any more big mad than I got during this episode.
That might be the title of the podcast. Might call it the Big Mad episode.
It's not the Big Mad episode.
We can call it the Big Mad. See, it's not the Big Mad episode, but that doesn't work into the narrative now, does it?
It does. Not work into the narrative because it's not true. And there might be a Big Mad episode.
Then we just call it the Big Mad episode part 2.
Oh my God.
2.0. The Bigger Mad episode. There's always something, it's how the language works. You just add on to the word. And
people are really mad at Floyd Mayweather, by the way.
What did he do now?
He had a boxing exhibition against one of them Paul brothers. And people forget that boxing is boxing. So they say, yo, he lost our credibility. He made like $30 million for like 30 minutes of work.
That's what he does. They call him money for a reason.
All right. Do you have any other questions?
We've delved into Floyd Mayweather talk. I think I am good. I've made my predictions. I'm just ready for some good basketball. I need Chris Middleton to take better shots in game 2. Just going back to Bucks Nets. I don't know what that was.
What you mean? That's his game.
I don't know what that was.
That's his game.
No. Like taking pull-ups is his game. Taking those pull-ups are not his game.
That's his game, man. That's his game. They don't call him Chris Middleton for no reason.
I get it. Yeah, I caught it the first time. The first time I've heard that one, let me tell you. Shout out to the ladies at Dishes and Dives. Thank you for listening to this week's, well, I guess not this week's. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dunker Spot. We'll be back at some point. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dunker Spot. If you have not, please subscribe if you haven't already. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. You can find Steve Jones Jr. at Steve Jones 20. You can find the Dunker Spot podcast account at Dunker Spot Pod. So please follow that.
I don't have the password to that either.
If you would check your text messages, then you would have the password to both the email and the account. But at any rate, we will catch y'all later.
Bye.